Napoleon Hill wrote the blueprint that created more millionaires than any book in history. But here's what nobody tells you about the man who supposedly unlocked the secrets of wealth. He died broke, and his businesses failed repeatedly. So how do you trust a success formula from a man who couldn't succeed himself? How do you follow the teachings of someone who might have been one of history's greatest con artists? You're probably thinking the same thing I thought when I first discovered this contradiction. If Hill's principles actually work, why didn't they work for him? And if they didn't work for him, why should they work for you? But here's where it gets interesting. What if I told you that Hill's personal failures don't invalidate his discoveries? What if the blueprint he created was so powerful that it worked for everyone except the man who built it? Today, we're not here to worship Napoleon Hill or defend his reputation. We're here to do something far more valuable. We're going to dissect his complete system, test it against modern psychology, and extract the core mechanisms that actually create wealth and success. Because the truth is, the blueprint works. It's been proven by thousands of millionaires who've used it, even if Hill himself couldn't follow his own advice. Let me start with the foundation that everything else builds on. Your definite chief aim. This isn't just goal setting. This is the psychological mechanism that separates the 2% who succeed from the 98% who drift through life, hoping things will get better. Hill discovered something that modern neuroscience has now confirmed. Your brain has a filtering system called the reticular activating system. It determines what you notice and what you ignore. When you have a clear, specific aim that consumes your thoughts, your brain starts noticing opportunities that were always there, but invisible to you before. But here's the catch that most people miss. Hill wasn't talking about writing down some vague wish like, "I want to be rich." He created a precise 6-step formula that programs your subconscious mind through repetition. First, you fix in your mind the exact amount of money you desire. Not a lot or enough to be comfortable. The exact amount. Second, you determine exactly what you intend to give in return for this money. Hill understood that wealth is always an exchange. Third, you establish a definite date when you intend to possess this money. Fourth, you create a definite plan for carrying out your desire and begin at once, whether you're ready or not. Fifth, you write out a clear, concise statement of all 4 previous points. And sixth, read this statement aloud twice daily, once just before retiring at night, and once after arising in the morning. That 6th step is where the magic happens, and it's where most people quit because it feels silly. But Hill discovered what psychologists now call autosuggestion. When you repeatedly feed your subconscious mind the same instructions, it accepts them as commands and begins working to make them reality. This brings us to the principle that makes people most uncomfortable: faith. But Hill wasn't talking about religious faith or blind hope. He was talking about a state of mind that can be induced through autosuggestion. You see, your subconscious mind cannot tell the difference between what's real and what you repeatedly imagine with emotion. When you read your definite aim twice daily with feeling, you're literally programming yourself to believe it's already achieved. Think about it this way. Every successful person you admire acts with absolute certainty that their plans will succeed, even when logic suggests otherwise. That's not delusion. That's engineered faith through mental repetition. But faith without action is worthless, which brings us to Hill's insights about knowledge. Here's where most self-improvement addicts get it wrong. They think success comes from learning more. Hill discovered the opposite. General knowledge is practically useless. What creates wealth is specialized knowledge, applied through organized planning. You don't need to be an expert at everything. You need to be an expert at one thing and have access to experts in everything else. This is where Hill's most powerful principle comes into play: the mastermind. Look at every major fortune in history. Carnegie surrounded himself with Henry Frick, Charles Schwab, and other steel industry experts. John D. Rockefeller built Standard Oil with a team of specialized partners. Henry Ford worked closely with Thomas Edison and Harvey Firestone. Even today, the PayPal Mafia, the group of entrepreneurs who created PayPal together, went on to found or fund Tesla, SpaceX, LinkedIn, YouTube, Yelp, and dozens of other billion-dollar companies. The pattern is undeniable. Massive success requires multiple minds working in harmony toward a definite purpose. You can't build an empire alone, no matter how brilliant you are. But here's where Hill's final book, Outwitting the Devil, reveals the real reason most people never apply these principles successfully. And this book is where the controversy reaches its peak. Because Hill wrote it in 1938, but it was considered so dangerous that it wasn't published until 2011, 73 years later. In this book, Hill identifies the enemy that destroys more dreams than poverty, fear, or lack of opportunity combined. He calls it drifting. And according to Hill's analysis, 98% of people are drifters. A drifter is someone who accepts whatever life hands them without making a definite decision about what they want. They have no major purpose in life. They're easily influenced by others. They procrastinate. They quit at the first sign of opposition. And most importantly, they avoid thinking for themselves at all costs. Hill claimed that drifting is not a passive state. It's an active choice. Every time you fail to make a decision, you've made the decision to drift. Every time you consume someone else's thoughts without forming your own opinion, you strengthen the drifting habit. Every time you postpone taking action on your definite aim, you feed the drift. This is why Hill's principles work for some people and not others. It's not about intelligence or talent or luck. It's about whether you're willing to stop drifting and take control of your own mind. Now, I need to be brutally honest with you about something that most Napoleon Hill followers won't admit. Hill himself was likely a drifter for much of his life. He started dozens of businesses and failed at most of them. He made and lost fortunes. He struggled with the same fears and doubts that plague everyone else. But here's what makes Hill's story so powerful. His failures don't invalidate his discoveries. In fact, they validate them. Hill learned these principles by studying what he lacked. He identified the mental habits of successful people by recognizing their absence in his own life. He was like a doctor who discovers the cure for a disease by studying his own symptoms. The blueprint Hill created works precisely because it came from someone who understood failure intimately. He knew what drifting looked like because he'd lived it. He knew what indecision cost because he'd paid the price. He knew what persistence could accomplish because he'd seen what happened when he quit. This is why I believe Hill's methodology is more trustworthy, not less, because of his personal struggles. He wasn't born with the success mindset. He had to engineer it, step by step, through the same process he teaches us. And that process boils down to this. You must decide exactly what you want. Program your subconscious mind to believe you'll achieve it. Gain the specialized knowledge needed to create a plan. Surround yourself with people who can multiply your efforts and persist through every obstacle until you succeed. The system works. It's been proven by thousands of millionaires who've used it. The question isn't whether Hill's methods are effective. The question is whether you have the discipline to apply them consistently, even when they feel uncomfortable, even when progress seems slow, even when doubt creeps in. Because here's the truth that no one wants to acknowledge. Most people won't do this. They'll watch this video, feel inspired, maybe even write down their definite aim, and then drift back into their old patterns within a week. But you're not most people, or you wouldn't have watched this far. You're someone who recognizes that success isn't an accident. It's a system. And now you have that system. The choice is yours. Will you drift with the 98%? Or will you join the 2% who decide their own destiny?